Clarissa, you're in northern New Mexico. What town are you in?
I live in Espanola.
Española, which is where we met and where you heard about the fest at a Starbucks.
That's right.
Yeah.
And lucky I did. It was a great thing to participate in.
So this is your second year.
This is my second year.
What attracted you to the fest in the first place? Why did you think it was a good idea to join up?
Well, I love poetry. I've been writing poetry since I was probably in elementary school. And it was just a really cool opportunity to write something. I like the idea of writing something every day. I think that really keeps you in practice. It was interesting trying to write for people that I didn't know or something that might be relevant to them, sharing with them something about my life or asking a question in a poem about their lives or both. So I really love that part of it too.
How did that work out?
Well, some people might think this is kind of stalkerish, but I would, if I could find the person online, I'd look them up. You have their address, and a lot of them are physical addresses. So I would look to see what their homes look like or their neighborhood look like, and, kind of imagine what that setting was like for people and put myself in that place and see what emotions came up. So, I don't know if other people did that. The other thing I did was I found people on Facebook, and I found one person who follows a poet that I've known since I was like in junior high. So it was cool that she and I shared that, and now we're Facebook friends.
What poet was that?
Arthur Z.
Oh, Arthur Z. Okay. I thought you were going to say Jimmy Santiago Baca.
Oh, well, yeah, there's him too. So
yeah. I've done that before. I used to look people. I used to stalk them.
You kind of have to. Otherwise, what else do you know about them? Then you're just writing about yourself or the card, right?
Yeah. Well, about what's happening, I think. But everybody's got to find a method. How does this fest augment your own poetry composition practice?
Well, it is my poetry practice. It's writing these short poems, I guess, especially right now, is all I have time for. I've been spending a lot of time journaling, and I think some of my poetry is coming out of that. But I work with older adults. I run some programs for our county, and we are pretty busy with these emergency measures that we put in place. So I love something that takes me out of the doingness and something that brings me into the beingness of our time.
Give us a sense of how you do the fest. You're sitting at your composing place. Tell us about what that looks like. Do you get the list and you write down the address and then start writing, or how do you work out a postcard?
Well, like I said, when I look at who's next on the list, I try to find out something about them and see what kind of inspiration hits. I'm typically actually at my office. I have a really beautiful office, and I have a great view of our valley from there. So that kind of opens things up for me. And I don't know, it's really cool how the subject matter comes to you and how you can relate to somebody who you don't even know through poems, through these postcards. And it is the coolest thing to get a postcard anyway. Emails and all the social media we do just doesn't connect you the same way that a postcard or a letter, any written word does, because it's, when you're looking at even the letters, the way that the person forms them, and you hear their voice through those words, there's nothing like that.
So you carry your list around with you and your cards, or do you leave those at the office, or how does that work?
They're always with me. It's the easiest way, because what if something hits you, and you're supposed to write your first draft on the postcard, And if you don't have your postcards with you, you may have missed that opportunity. It might go away by the time you get that postcard.
Ain't that something? Can you tell us a little bit about any experience you've had getting a card, or anything, funny story or interesting mailman story or something like that?
Well, I definitely think my mail person was reading my poetry. She always had a smile on her face when I had a postcard this last round, and I've gotten my first postcard in this round. So, and the other thing is my staff handles my mail, so they were always, we get privacy in our area, so they wouldn't necessarily read them, but they were like, "Oh, you got another postcard," and I'd always share it with them. Would you like to read it? Because my staff are two young women, and they really hadn't been into poetry or even read much poetry, so this was a whole new experience for them to know that this stuff was coming from different places, really all over the world, here to little Espanola, New Mexico, population 12,000. And our very people who don't know about us, we're called the Tewa Basin. Our Tewa people have been here for about 30,000 years. Spanish came about 400 plus years ago, including some of my families, and I'm also Tewa. So, this has been it's been a place where people lived off the land and lived simply. And the modern age has really kind of crushed us in the fact that we have a major drug epidemic going on. But these words, poetry, art, music are really some of the most important things that we do here and have here. So for these young people to experience these postcards and this poetry through my experience has been like another world opening up for them. And I think that's really cool.
So that's one of the things you love about the project. One of my questions I wanted to ask you were to name three things about the project, but you already named one, and that's really beautiful and really paints a picture. And for anyone who's not been to New Mexico, it's like going to another world. And I mean that in a really good way. Feel very comfortable there. And it's like, I don't know, kind of country that you'd want to visit, and that you could see yourself living in. So tell us a couple of other things you like about the Postcard Fest.
Well, I really like the Facebook page too. It's a great place for people to share news, and people celebrate when they get a postcard. And it's cool to see the design. Some people share the postcards that they actually make, and I think that is hugely inspirational to know that you could do not just the written word as your art, but also you could make some art and send that out. And I think that the people who have been in the fest for a while have a lot to contribute, and it really helps bolster your confidence in writing poetry. You don't have to worry whether it's the best. That's the great part about it being that first draft. It's just who you are in those moments, and that art being taken out into the world is a beautiful thing.
How do you get your cards?
Well, I get my cards at my work. Most of my mail comes to me at work just because I'm at work a lot. So
No, I mean the cards that you send out.
how does it come to me?
No, do you buy your postcards at the drugstore or?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. I'm being a little dense because I think my mind went somewhere else. I was in the spirit world there for a second. Well, anyway, what was really cool about the postcards that I have been sending out is the one person on the Facebook page said that she had a lot of postcards, and that if anybody wanted some, you could ask her for them. So I did have some postcards of my own that I had kind of collected oddly over the years. But she sent me a whole bunch, and so that was super cool to even see what she would send, because those are also postcards that this woman had saved, through many years. And it was an extremely eclectic collection that she sent to me, and I loved it because that also really was a font of inspiration for me.
Were there any cards that you got and you thought, I got to write about this card on the card to the next person?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there were cards I did not want to send out too. They were so cool. I had to convince myself that they weren't just for me. So yeah, no, that was a huge gift for me.
Are there any poetry communities you think might be interested in hearing about the fest that you haven't told already?
Well, I'll tell you, most of my life is centered around this valley, and purposely so. My parents were both educated, which college educated, which is unusual for this area back in that time. I'm going to be 52 this summer, and I think I could have gone anywhere in the world like my sister did, but I really wanted to be here and help our people. And I'm just so connected to the earth here that I have never really wanted to leave. I left for 7 years and was so homesick. So when I think of who could know about this, I think just about the people here. And I think that young people would be really interested in doing this. Are people who are my age and older, there are definitely poet communities. Some people have said they're interested, but one of the things about our area is you have to have those people who are risk takers, who are going to try something, and people are watching you. They're going to see how you do it over the years. And maybe like this year or next year, people will start being interested in it because they'll trust it, or they'll at least be trusting of me enough to try it. And I hope that we do get some more people from northern New Mexico, because the Native and Chicano voice from this area is extremely unique, in my opinion.
What would you tell them about the fest if they asked you about it? Hey, Clarissa, what can you tell me about this Postcard Fest? What would your advice be to them?
Well, part of it would be sending the Norteño voice out there. It's, especially right now, Native wisdom, Chicano wisdom is really needed for our world. It's a really profound wisdom. It's, we have gone through so much together here, and we have survived so much together here. War with the United States being only about 100 years ago. So I think that people need to hear that people can survive and thrive under the worst conditions. And yes, we're in a horrible condition right now. I think people from here have gone through even worse. So I think they have a lot to lend to helping people feel better about what's happening right now.
Excellent. Do you have a postcard poem that you wrote that you'd like to share with us?
No, I didn't
No?
prepare like that. I'm sorry.
I should have let you know in advance.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm grateful. Go ahead.
What I do love, though, is I love seeing people who are composing poems together. So I think, why don't you spit out the first line and I'll follow you.
Okay. The reflections of the 19-mile-long lake are bouncing up and down behind my head.
And through my eyes and my vision, I see myself in the water. I see my mother and my grandmothers. I feel grandmother's water washing over me. And I know that in these moments and the moments to come, I am well.
Well, I can't top that. Clarissa, what a delight to have you here and spend these few minutes with us talking about Popo, and to see you again. I only met you that one time, and I'm so grateful that you trusted me and joined the fest. And give Amalio and my other friends there my best, and continued success with your work with your people.
Thank you so much for everything that you're doing to make sure that we can have a voice out there and that we're having a lot of fun. Thank you.
My best to you.
Thank you.